Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. I'm your host, Chris Pope. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not sure what's going on. It looks like there's a delay. I don't know why my camera is, I'm trying to record off my computer and I don't know that the audio and the video is going to match up. I messed with it for a minute, but y'all don't listen to see my pretty face. Y'all listen to hear my crazy words, so we'll roll with it. First off, before we get started, big thanks, and I want to be sure that we are supporting our sponsor. So Cots Bros Lures, like I've been saying, man, it's summertime, time to get stocked up on bait and lure and supplies. I've got my credits sitting in the store that I've got to get some stuff ordered from them, so I can be ready, like I always say I'm going to be. But be sure, hey, if you got some castor laying around, if you've got some skunk essence laying around, give them a call, and they'll treat you good. I can tell you that from personal experience on swapping or selling them glands. But whatever you need to get your trap line outfitted to be ready to rock and roll and take advantage of this upcoming fantastic first season that we got. You know what? I ain't worried what the sales are doing. I'm worried about trapping, because that is why I do it. That's why we all do it, right? For the love of it. We ain't in it for the money. If we was in it for the money, we'd be doing something else, I can promise you. But I've gotten some feedback. I've had a couple folks tell me that they placed their order with Cots Bros, and I sure appreciate that. If you happen to talk to Kyle or Kellen, tell them where you heard about it at the Coyote Trapping School podcast. Hope we're giving those Yankees a little break into the southern world, right? But thinking about, the heat, man, it's been hot. I was working outside today, and it's been hot. It's summertime, and the coronavirus and all this crazy stuff going on. It got me thinking about a simpler time, really fond memories. It got me thinking about my my couple of stints that I did in Alaska. The first summer that I went to Alaska, I was part of a research project, and honestly, that's kind of what gave me a bad taste about research, because we were studying river otter latrines, and I can't say too much bad stuff because they paid my way and paid me to go to Alaska and live in Alaska. So that was a dream come true, a dream fulfilled, just to be able to get that opportunity. But we were mapping these river otter toilet sites. So we were in coastal Alaska. We were camping in Prince William Sound on an island, and we had a couple of boats, and we would go around. They already had these toilet locations documented, and we would go to them, and we would map out the edges, how large the site was, the slope, and then they would also take soil and leaf samples, and they would take that on the site and then off the site to try to see what kind of impact the river otters were having to those specific latrine sites. And I don't know, I really struggled with that, because there was a lot of money spent on that project. And what the heck difference does it make? And what the heck difference does it make if you find out that the soil on a river otter toilet site in coastal Alaska has a higher iron content or whatever? I mean, man, that, I don't know. But the thing that bugs me is I know there's tons of research money out there that's getting spent on stuff that just really doesn't matter. But that is neither here nor there. That was an awesome time. That was my first experience in Alaska, and it might be worth doing kind of a podcast on that. But what I thought about this time was kind of talking about my second trip to Alaska. Actually, I've been to Alaska 3 times. The first summer, and then I think the second time was actually a hunting trip. I went on a hunting trip. Me and a couple buddies from college. We did a deer and duck hunt off of Shuyak Island, which Shuyak Island is the island on the northernmost tip of Kodiak Island. We did it on a shoestring budget, but man, you talk about it. Man, that was an awesome time. If you've never been to Alaska, there's just something about Alaska. And if you can be to the point of where you're getting dropped off by boat or by plane or by something and that mode of transportation leaves you, and you are out. You just you and the people you're with. Man, there's something that's it's incredible. That's an incredible feeling. It really kind of gives you a sense of just a little bit of what the mountain men must have felt like, just going off on their own, just to parts unknown. And then so the next time that I went to Alaska was part of a trapping project, and so we were in the Aleutian Islands. And the Aleutian Islands are part of the Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge, which is a huge refuge, because the Aleutian Islands are a huge chain, right? I think I saw somewhere where the Aleutian Islands, if you put them on like the contiguous U.S., stretch from St. Louis to San Francisco. So you're talking about just a huge expanse, and there's islands that vary from the island that we trapped. May have been was one of the smallest that had foxes for sure. It was a little over 3,300 acres, up to hundreds of over 100,000 acres. Some of the islands, volcanic islands and volcanic activity, and man, it was just an unreal experience. So the way we got that started was back in the way before we got anything started. I didn't get anything started, but in the 1700s, Russians discovered the islands, and at that point, fox fur was hugely valuable, to the tune of like a couple $100 a pelt in the 1700s. And so these islands were originally inhabited by seabirds. So I saw one when I was kind of looking around. I saw one estimate that the Aleutian it's the Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge, is home to over 40 million seabirds, and these are treeless islands that have nothing but mainly seabirds. But then there's some ptarmigan species that live on there, and then there's what was the endangered Aleutian cackling goose, which is a subspecies of the Canada goose, and that's really what kind of got this whole fox project started. And so, I mean, really and truly, this is an incredible story. I need to package it better. I need to, I don't know, I need to try to work on that, try to package it better. But it's a story of conservation, right? It's how trapping directly impact and improved habitat, and has restored, allowed the restoration of millions, literally millions of seabirds through their habitat, and non-native predator being gone from the landscape. And so what happened years ago was the Russians discovered these islands with these huge, ground nesting seabird populations. So they thought, hey, this is a self-sustaining fox farm. We throw out a few pairs of foxes and let them breed and populate and fill the island up, and in 4 or 5 years we come back, trap some foxes, and it's, we can come back every few years and catch what we want. And apparently that worked out pretty good, because they started putting foxes on basically any island that they could land on. So what happened is, like in the case of the Aleutian cackling goose, that there was one rocky island that was too difficult to land a boat on, apparently, and so that island did not have any foxes introduced to it, and that was one of the last strongholds of the Aleutian cackling goose. And when it was discovered that the geese were breeding on that island, they actually captured some of them and took them off and had them. They raised young goslings and geese from those ones that they captured, and then used those to put on some of the islands after the foxes had been removed. And so it's a really awesome experience to have had the chance to make an impact on a site like that, and much less just to kind of live a dream of being able to trap in Alaska. Now, the trapping itself wasn't that spectacular. I don't think that Arctic foxes are super cunning, or at least these weren't. And it may have to do with a series of inbreeding and things like that. But these foxes, they've been introduced to the island. So the island that we were trapping was Rootok Island, Rootok. And as we were prepping to go to the island, we thought to ourselves, 3,300 acres. It was like 5 by 6 square miles, something like that. Man, we're gonna have this island covered in no time. This is gonna be child's play. The island wound up being more substantial than we expected. But the way that the program works is, and I'm just kind of bouncing all over the place here, but I thought I'd kind of relive some of these memories, I guess, and hope that y'all appreciate some of the stories and the way we went about it, and maybe this will encourage somebody to try to seek out an opportunity like this. But the way that they've gone about it is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has had, I assume they still do, the guy that was heading it when I got to participate in the program, he is retired, but they've got an invasive species biologist, and there's a rash of invasive species throughout the Aleutian Islands, from cattle, horses, rats. Obviously, rats are a big problem anywhere that ships land. Marmots, rabbits, and then the foxes, caribou. So they would kind of select these islands, probably based on funding, and try to target, eradicating foxes off of these islands, and just slowly go. This is a program that's been going since the 40s, eradicating the foxes, and they've seen the dramatic success of the seabirds recolonizing these islands, and that's why it is continued like it has. And I'm not sure how the selection process goes for selecting the islands, but they'll go in and get an idea of kind of the lay of the island. And so these foxes, from my experience, and one of the guys that I trapped on the island with, he went back and trapped one of the larger islands a few years after we went. But these foxes are largely, because there's not much on the interior of the island. There's no native mammals to the island, land mammals. You've got seals and sea lions along the coast, and if there's a few nesting birds here and there, and that's it. And so there's voles. We caught our foxes pretty quick, and then we wound up catching voles because we ran out of stuff to trap, and the trapper's going to trap something, right? So, but there's very little food on some of these islands, or the islands that I was on, and so the foxes are heavily dependent on the coastline and whatever washes up. And so they're constantly trolling that coastline looking for, I guess they eat some of the kelp that washes up maybe, but then seal and sea lion carcasses, whale carcasses, fish carcasses, whatever washes up. And so that was the kind of the plan as trappers, to target those the coastline heavily. And so we would do that. The primary mode was to kind of, somebody would initially kind of survey the island, scope out the island, figure out where good campsites were, because you're camping. So the Fish and Wildlife Service has a 120-foot vessel, a research vessel that goes up and down the Aleutian chain all summer, and because there's bird watchers and bird survey stations that are set up on some of the islands, and then you get the fox trappers, and you've got different things. And so you board this boat in Homer, and you ride it out until whatever island, and they drop you off at the island. And initially, the first couple days, we kind of used the ship as a home base or I guess it was really the first day. We set up camp and then used the ship as a home base to kind of make a quick, run around the perimeter of the island and try to set what we could. And the way our island was set up is, I was trying to think how the area that we camped, how it laid. It must have laid somewhat easterly, and so it was kind of two bowls, and we were in one bowl that had a really good, nice, sheltered beach, sandy beach. It was easy to land boats on, and then it went up, and then the other side, was another kind of bowl out to the back side, but it had a real rocky beach. It didn't have a good landing beach on it, and then the So those would be like the east-west sides, and then the north-south sides were cliffs, just straight up and down. And so that's why you get the bowl. So you had to kind of go up to the peak of the ridge to cross down and over into the other bowl, and it was just, you start looking at it, and man, that 3,300 acres looks big quick. It's just little valleys and tussocks, and everything was, a lot of it you bogged down to your knee shins, just really soft walking. But we had rubber boats, Zodiacs, and we would take those boats, and we did the first probably 2 to 3 weeks. When we got to Alaska, we kind of had training in Homer, and we did a lot of training with the boats, and would do like bump and runs. And so the way you would put somebody out on the way you would put a trapper out is generally we had 3 guys, and one would run the boat, and you had 2 trappers that would kind of scurry on and off the boat. And so you'd find a place, and because you're dealing with the constant waves and tides, you'd try to find a rock that stuck out far enough that you could kind of bump the boat up against that rock, but it was safe enough, it was deep enough you didn't have to worry about the motor, and it was safe enough that the trapper could maneuver to shore, and then you could just throw the boat in reverse. And so what we actually did is you would nose up to the rock, and then you would gas on it to keep the boat pressed up against the rock. Trapper would get off, and as soon as you knew he was off safe, you started backing up because the waves were steady coming in. You kind of had to watch him and time your entry. We were wearing full rubber rain gear the whole time, life jackets and all. And so you would drop one trapper off, and he would go one way, and so you loop around and drop another trapper off, and you kind of hopscotch them to cover as much ground as possible, and they're setting traps as they go, looking for sign, when the sand that's there. And the trapping was very, very basic. I mean, for us, it'd be equivalent to raccoon trapping. I mean, we were, not covering the traps, leaving traps exposed. You put some bait out there on that beach, and those foxes were coming to it. And we were just nailing. Usually, we'd use driftwood in a V, and we put the bait in the top of the V, the trap back here, nail the trap chain, just dupe 1 1/2, nail the trap chain to one of the pieces of driftwood that was your V, and boom, that's it. The Arctic foxes were very small. I mean, almost cat size. I mean, it was nothing what I expected. But man, the Aleutian Islands, that area out there is really harsh. It's a rugged environment, and so that was kind of the general gist. Is you bump around and drop trappers off and cover a span, and then go back to camp and fuel everything up, make sure everything was good, cook supper, and it was. Man, I think about it pretty fondly, because it was just such a different kind of scenario than the hustle and bustle of everyday life. And it was, you were just out there, just 3 of you out there for the day. We had a radio check-in, and I mean, you had your job to do. Everything else was taken care of. Your biggest worry past trying to trap foxes was figuring out what was for supper. And it was so little worries. It was just, man, it was a unique experience that I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back now, I kind of crave that, just like I said, because you had no worries. It was just, everything was kind of lined out. It was pretty straightforward what you were going to do and how your day was going to go. But you could, so if it wasn't, there was some stuff that you could access from land, and the Aleutians being pretty rugged, not every day we could get out on the boats. And so if we didn't run the boats, then we would, try to walk to wherever we could and set traps. And you could see, apparently, just over the decades and I guess over the centuries, is how long those foxes have been there. And with the slow growth rates on those islands, how there were trails, presumably fox trails, worn down, and you start walking along some of those ridges, kind of the cliff ridges that went down into the ocean, and you'd see a trail just plain as day running through there. And so, I mean, we set a bunch of those. We didn't the majority of the foxes. We only caught 19 foxes on the island, which was a huge disappointment because we caught those like the first 2 weeks. Most of those in the first 2 weeks, and there for like 2.5 months. What we're gonna do? We set a lot of traps, a lot of empty traps, but just covering the ground, and we walk, and there was a couple of passes. I think we caught one. I caught one. I remember one fox that I caught that was there was kind of like up on the north ridge. There was kind of like a wind tunnel area for whatever reason. Just somehow the wind funneled, and man, it was just blowing like it was a place where you could stand and lean into it at like a 45-degree angle, and the wind would hold you up. But there was just a little jog, and there was a little trail along that ridge, and I caught a fox along that ridge, but eagles apparently had found it before we got there, and they had eaten most of it, but there was still the fox carcass left there. And then in the center of the island, where the kind of the ridge broke over into the other bowl, I caught a fox there on one of those little inland trails. There wasn't most of the foxes stayed to the coastline, and it was very, very easy trapping, but you definitely had to deal with the weather conditions, and so that was one of the things that probably weighed on me the most. And man, I was so ready to get out of the islands by the time it was time for us to go, but it didn't take long, and I'd go back right now in a heartbeat. But wind was constant, and for us down here in the south with all the trees we got, wind's not that big of a thing. The wind blew all the time, and that wore on me. Golly, that got wearisome. And then wasn't a lot of sunshine too. It's something that we take for granted down here in the south, in a lot of the U.S. I guess. There wasn't a whole lot of sunshine. A lot of days of wearing your rain gear, and mist or fog would set in, at the drop of a hat, and you'd kind of be up walking around one of these ridges, and fog would set in, and we just plop down and eat some jerky or eat a candy bar, or just kind of wait on the fog to pass. So just trying to think. I mean, that was overall the gist of it. We had a weather port, which is kind of a half circle, kind of domed, heavy duty tent, and that's where we had all our food and kind of our kitchen and common area. And then each of us had like a 4-man tent, that we had a cot and whatever all our provisions, all our stuff was, and we kind of spread those out. We kind of staked those out. And what was kind of neat about the island is there's they call them middens. And it's places where the natives, the Aleut people or Aleut Indians, years ago, where they would kind of have their homes, and there'd be piles of bones and things like that. And there was actually an old trapper's cabin on the island that we were on. It was dilapidated and long gone, but it was I don't know, neat to see, neat to know that somebody else had been there trapping foxes, presumably making money off of them. And so, we had the goal for our trip for our island was to go at least 2 weeks at the end of the project without catching a fox. And obviously there wasn't a lot of sand on the beaches, but anytime we could work the beaches and look, we were always looking for tracks. I only saw one fox that wasn't in a trap when I was there. And it ran down in a hole along the beaches, some of the beaches. I mean, there were some big old boulders and big giant rocks, and it ran down in some of the rocks, and I was unable to do anything with it, but I set some traps and caught it, but just a different experience. So the one thing that we did get to do, we did a lot of fishing because we didn't have any fresh meat. Um, so we actually found out somehow, I don't even know why we got the harebrained idea, but there was kind of a big rock down the beach from our camp, and we figured out if we could go kind of get on that rock and get out a little bit out in the water, we could fish out there and catch a kelp greenling. And so we did that pretty darn regular, fishing off of there. And one of the neatest things is I think there was two of them that we caught that were really just incredibly colored. And when we filleted them, the meat was blue. They had this, this color, this blue color on, it's kind of stripes and stuff. But when we filleted them, the meat was blue. Sure enough, it was crazy. It cooked up white. I mean, you couldn't really tell it after you cooked it, but that was pretty neat. But I caught a cod, and we caught some, I think, arrowhead flounder, or something like that. So we had a couple fishing rods, and then, what we would do if we would take the boat out and we would just hand line. We had some big weights and big jigs, and we'd drop them over the side on just some rope. And, once it hit the bottom, then you just start jigging. And it seemed crazy to somebody, to me, that you would catch fish like that, but you sure enough would. And saw whales, and I can't remember, I think it was eagles now, but we saw, me and Mark, my trapping partner buddy, there was one day that we were walking inland, working some of the interior, and saw two eagles locked together in one of the mating rituals where they're spiraling down to the earth, and right before they get to the ground they separate. But that was pretty incredible. But just the overall, just that being out in the wilderness, with nobody around, there's just an incredible feeling about that. It's hard to explain, and I think if you're listening to this, it's probably something that you long for, because I think I definitely longed for it, and I sure do now. Just something that's very rare to be able to access an area like that. And it was just, somewhere where who knows when the last person set foot on that island, and looking at new things, and it was just a lot of fun. So as part of that, there was two. So that Rutuk Island is not terribly far from Dutch Harbor. So there's another island, Akutan, that's got a village, and then from that village is the island that Dutch Harbor's on. And I guess kind of directly north of Rutuk, there was two islands. They call them the Rabbit Islands, Tanga and Poa, I believe. And the plan was for the following summer, they were going to trap the rabbit islands, try to get the rabbits off the islands. And so that was a neat experience, because for the last 2 weeks of the project, we went over there, set up camp, and trap rabbits to try to determine the best methods for trapping the rabbits. And to see those islands and the birds on those islands, and to get a sense of what the island, Rutuk, the island that we were on, would have looked like had it not had foxes on it, was pretty incredible. So there was this one edge of the island that looked, I guess, kind of back southeast, back towards Rutuk Island, and it was just solid puffin nests, and all the nests were dug into the cliff, but it was just solid puffins. I mean, thousands of them, and they would swirl and fly, circling right there, because it was kind of on a cliff. But man, it was incredible, and the rabbits would use those holes too. And so we shot some rabbits, we trapped some rabbits, and then it would have been interesting too to see Rutuk, because after we left and we went to the Rabbit Islands, I don't know if it was because of the rabbits or I don't know what it was, but the grass on that island was like chest high. And you could find the trails and right to the rabbit holes and stuff, and those were a little bit more rugged islands. It was tough to find a spot for camp. On one of the islands, we camped on the easier accessible island. The other island was You had to, I mean, everything had to go straight up before you could get to a campsite. But we tried out some of the RGB, or RBG, the round body grips. We had snares, we had regular conibears, footholds. I think we had. I mean, we were trying a whole variety of things to try to determine what was the the best for trapping those rabbits. But it was really neat to see an island, to get an idea of what Rutuk Island may look like in a few years now that the foxes are gone. Seeing all the puffins and the ground nesting birds we had. So I did one day on Rutuk see a goose, a cackling goose that I guess he had just stopped in. It was real foggy. And then I did see one of the ptarmigan. So I think there are some ptarmigan that are native to the Aleutian Islands. And obviously, I mean, they're ground nesters, and they were, I think I ran across that nest, and the ptarmigan was on it. But just getting an idea of what that island may look like now that the foxes are gone. I'm no bird person, but knowing the impact that you're having and how that's going to last and what that's going to do, man, it was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed that opportunity to be able to make that impact, and just the opportunity that I got to do the trapping and live in a remote place like that, experience something that very, very few people ever experience. Man, it was just an incredible opportunity. And I've said it before. There's actually, so I wrote an article called "The Aleutian Experience" it's been years ago now, but it was for trapper and predator caller. And I was pretty proud that it actually got selected for that year's their yearbook. So one of the top articles of the year they reprinted in that yearbook edition. And then I also sent the article I guess this was 2 years ago now, well after Trapper and Predator Caller, but sent the article to Jeremiah Wood, and so he posted it on Trapping Today. And I talked about it on a couple of his podcasts, but so I'll link to that article, the Aleutian Experience article. It kind of gives an overview of everything. It goes a little more in depth on how the project originated. But I said before that started out this episode, right, talking about how we're not in it for the money, and but I have to say, and I said it before, that trapping may not have paid me that spectacular financially, but man, the experiences and the opportunities that I've gotten because I'm a trapper, and I've know trappers and kind of been in the trapping circle. There's no way I would have gotten the opportunities that I've done, of going to Alaska twice. I mean, the first time didn't really have anything related to trapping, but my general outdoor skills of being able to run a boat, being comfortable camping for 3 months, being able to handle myself in the woods, and having a level head to be able to handle others around in the woods with bears and rough conditions. I mean, my outdoorsmanship and having that passion and trapping as well it's provided more opportunities than I could have ever bought. And so, I appreciate all the trappers, all y'all that are out listening, and supporting this, what I'm doing, just telling stories and talking to people. I mean, that's all this is. But it's such a unique brotherhood, and I'm getting kind of sappy now, but I'm thankful. I'm proud to be a trapper, and I'm thankful that I got that. I had that spark lit under me to pursue something like this. So whatever that's good for. In general, trapping is conservation, right? I mean, we can have an impact, a positive impact, and use the skills that we have acquired and developed. And realistically, hang on, my dog's barking. But you know, realistically, odds are, you know, trapping and our regulations and all are going to get more and more cumbersome, and you know, trapping is going to start getting outlawed in places, already has. But the skills and the knowledge that we've acquired, um, that skill set is going to be in demand. Whether it's, you know, doing wildlife control or whether it's targeting, you know, nuisance species, because you know that's one thing that people definitely can justify, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. You justify, you know, they justify killing foxes in the Aleutian Islands because it's going to provide, you know, habitat and restore birds, and so there's a lot of those new invasive species situations, you know, scattered around the world in different places that um, I would assume and that are you know going to get addressed, and you know, as trappers we have potential opportunity to you know, participate in that or take advantage of that, and so if that's something you're interested in, be on the lookout, I guess, um, because you know those opportunities are out there. So I guess that will kind of wrap it up. Like I said, I didn't really have an agenda, but I just got to thinking, and you know, that both the times that I've been in Alaska for the summer, I think there was maybe 2 days that it was sunny and I could wear a short sleeve shirt. You know, down here, wear short sleeve shirts in December and January. You know, um, up there it just cool and rainy, and um, it's it's different. But man, it's awesome. It's If you ever get the chance, the opportunity to go to Alaska, I would encourage you to jump at it. I'm hopefully it's not going to happen this year, but I've got a plan in my mind of coordinating a trapping trip to Alaska, and I'm pretty excited about it. I'm really hoping I can pull it all together next year. But you better believe y'all are coming along for the ride if I do, because I'm super pumped and excited about it. So um, with that, I'll wrap it up. Um, I shouldn't say that because one thing, you know, talking about opportunities, I hope you got something out of the series about, in the episodes about building and running a wildlife control operation, a wildlife control business. And I guess the takeaway that I kind of wanted to put out there, and I maybe should have done it better, maybe should have done it at the start of the episode, but there's opportunities out there. That's one thing that I figured out. You've got to put yourself out there, and sometimes it takes a little investment, and more often it's time investment than money investment. But there's opportunities out there if you're interested, if you're wanting to find them, if you're willing to find them. You know, there's a lot of people that sit on the sidelines and hold on to me, and that, excuse me, you know, nothing ever comes my way. I'll never get a chance to be paid to go to Alaska. Um, but they're out there, whether it's, you know, going as a birder or a fish biologist, or, you know, a fox trapper, or if it's, you know, starting a sideline business doing nuisance wildlife removal. You know, I mean, it's there's not a whole heck of a lot of equipment, and you know, as a trapper, I mean, I didn't have anybody really train me. I've gone with a few people and I've taken some trainings, but you know, getting started in this business, um, you know, as trappers, what do? We look for sign, we try to figure out where the animals are coming and going. If somebody's got squirrels in their attic or raccoons in their attic or whatever, it's the same process. You're just looking at a structure rather than out in the woods, you know. And so, man, if it's something that you've had interest in, give it a try. You know, I got this pile of beaver tails here, and I got a few wallets in various. This is my first trifold, by the way. I've had some questions about the trifold, and finally found a kind of a pattern that I like. So I think it's going to turn out. I'll be posting it soon, but I've got some beaver tail wallets in various forms of being made. And I was doing a spreadsheet. I try to keep track of my sales, just to kind of track that, and also to make sure when somebody places an order, I'm keeping track of it and getting it out. But I've made $1,500 this year just selling beaver tail leather stuff, and I haven't even been trying hard. I mean, I've part of it has been through this the 7 years that I've been posting content online. I mean, I've built an audience, and that's what has allowed me to not push it a whole lot and be able to, sell some of this stuff. But regardless, I could definitely sell more if I was trying to, and there's definitely opportunity to sell more. And yeah, I've got a sewing machine that helps me make it, but you don't have to have one. You can get you some of these punches right here and a couple of needles, and you can hand sew these things. I mean, and I mean very minimal. It's $8. Have one of these tanned, and you can buy, one of these. The leather that I buy that looks like this, I buy a whole roll of it for $100 from Tandy Leather, and I glue the tail on there. I got my patterns. I glue the tail on. I cut the pattern out, glue the tail on there, sew it, and then sew the interior together, and bing, bang, boom. I mean, it takes some time. It takes a little bit of want to, and a little bit of thinking about how to, how can I make something out of this? But man, the opportunity's there, and so I guess that's my walk away, is regardless of what you're after or what I don't really know, regardless of what you think. I mean, the opportunities are there to do something, whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's go trap somewhere, make stuff to try to make it where you can work for yourself one day. The opportunities are there to have a podcast and talk to people and get paid to do it. So I hope that encourages somebody to do something. If it does, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I will wrap it up for sure on that one. But as always, I appreciate y'all watching. I appreciate y'all listening. If you haven't, please subscribe, whether that's through iTunes or your podcast player. Subscribe on YouTube. Give me a like or a thumbs up on YouTube. Leave a comment. I'm not always the best outside of trapping season, especially at replying to comments, but I try to go through there on a semi-regular basis and respond to folks. But shoot me an email, chris@coyotetrappingschool.com. I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, I appreciate y'all watching, supporting, and we'll catch you next time.